Hi, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Our devotion for today, May 20th, 2020, is Luke's account of the discovery by some of Jesus' disciples that the tomb that he was buried in is now empty. This is the most important day of all of human history, a day when human beings learn that there is a power greater than death and a God who is willing to share that power with them. From St. Luke, the 24th chapter, beginning with the first verse. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they went to the tomb, taking the spices they had prepared. The they in this case are the women who had gone with Joseph of Arimathea on the evening that they took Jesus' body down from the cross and then delivered it to the hand-carved tomb that Joseph had made for himself and was now giving to Jesus' family for his body to be laid in. The women saw where the tomb was, and they saw how Jesus' body had been laid on that night. But they couldn't do very much to prepare the body for burial because the Sabbath was upon them, so they left. Well, now it's the morning that is after the Sabbath, and they're able to come to the tomb now with their spices, with their ointment, and prepare Jesus' dead body appropriately. Please note that this verse says that it's the first day of a new week. In truth, it's the first day of new life for all those who believe in Jesus. Verse 2, and they found the stone rolled away from the tomb, and when they went in, they did not find the body of Jesus. Notice that Luke doesn't mention anything about the Roman guard that had been stationed there. We are left to wonder where they are now, since they don't seem to be at the tomb. And what is this? The stone that blocked the entrance to the tomb has been moved, and the entrance is wide open. The women go in, but they can't find the body of Jesus in the tomb. He's nowhere to be found. What happened to him? Verse 4, and while they were perplexed about this, behold, two men stood by them in dazzling apparel, and as they were frightened and bowed their faces to the ground, the men said to them, why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, he has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified and on the third day rise. And they remembered his words. The women can't find the body of Jesus in the tomb, which they had seen for themselves the night that they had taken him down from the cross and laid him in it. So they're confused, right? They don't know what's happened. I know I'd be confused as well. Suddenly, two men appear near them. They're very unusual men. They're wearing dazzling clothes. Another gospel writer says the clothes are white as snow, that they appeared as lightning to get to where the women were. Here we have heavenly messengers. We have angels. Their appearance and presence frightens the women, and they bow their faces to the ground, a sign not just of fear, but a sign also of reverence. The women sense something is going on that they cannot explain. The men ask them, why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and then be crucified and on the third day rise. The women seeking the dead body of Jesus are now told that, the one they're seeking is not dead, but he has arisen. And the men seek to jog their memory. Remember how he, Jesus, told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and crucified and on the third day rise. I mean, you'll find this in the Gospel of Matthew, the 20th chapter, verses 17 through 19. And returning from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the rest who were still in the room. So the women return from where they had been, the empty tomb, thinking on what the angels had said. And they come to the room, and of course you got the 11 inner circle disciples holed up there, and then there are others in the room as well. And the women share their remarkable story. So history records for all of us from that time on that women are the very first human beings to proclaim the gospel and to share the gospel. They're the very first ones who preach the gospel. And their audience doubts them. As a pastor, that I've noticed that sometimes in congregations I've served or when I've preached someplace that not everybody believes what a pastor has to say. Not everybody agrees with the gospel. These in the audience, these 11 in particular men, question the validity of their message, just as some people do today, questioning the validity of a woman preacher. They were wrong then. They're wrong today as well. God has his own way of working and choosing the vessels he's going to use, the mediums that he is going to work through for the gospel to be proclaimed. We don't get to decide which medium God is going to use. He decides. And so, in this case, God chose women. God chooses women today. God chooses people of color today. God chooses children today. God chooses people of limited means. God chooses people who are physically challenged. God chooses people of limited intelligence. God chooses people who have been prisoners in jail. And oh yes, sometimes God even chooses those who are wealthy, those who have status, and those who have power. But not usually. Verse 10, now it was Mary Magdalene and Jonah and Mary, the mother of James, and the other women with them who told these things to the apostles. Well, because of earlier scripture, we can assume that these are the same women who had been there, who had taken Jesus' body down from the cross and taken it to the tomb with Joseph of Arimathea. And now, the body wasn't where it had been laid, and the tomb was empty, and these women come back and report what they find. And so they're the true witnesses from beginning to end, from the crucifixion to the taking down of the body, to the laying it in the tomb, to coming back to the tomb and finding it empty. True witnesses to the account. And yet, verse 11, but these words, seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. The 11, the men. Through spiritual blindness, ego, gender prejudice, even grief, the male disciples did not believe these first true disciples who were proclaiming the gospel to them. Jesus is not dead. He has risen. No alleluias, no thanks be to God, no, he is risen indeed. And frankly, I think it's to their shame. Thank God not all of them would leave it just at that. Verse 12, but Peter rose and ran to the tomb, stooping and looking in. He saw the linen cloths by themselves, and he went home marveling at what had happened. In Luke's account, Peter's the only one who leaves the room and runs to the tomb and looks in to see that the tomb is empty. And then he leaves marveling at what had happened. The Greek word thaumazo is translated in English as marvel, admire, wonder. Of these three, I'm personally more inclined to believe that Peter wondered about what all of this meant. He wondered what God was doing in and through Jesus. He wondered about this one who he had denied 3 times. He wondered about how it was Jesus could tell them all about this, even to the point of his resurrection, and it would come true. That he himself, the one who had raised a couple others from the dead, would himself be raised from the dead. When you think of Jesus being raised from the dead, are you filled with wonder, admiration? Do you marvel at it? Perhaps we can do all three in this day and age when humanity, has been made aware of the power greater than death for the past 2,000 years. Or perhaps we don't marvel as much as we should. Perhaps we don't wonder about it as much as we should. This power found in the resurrection of Jesus, a power extended to you and to me by grace, claimed in faith. Go in peace. Serve the Lord.